actually, and invite you to kind of introspection work. I would like to know how the war transformed your work as journalist and as a filmmaker, because you have been working as journalist, freelancer journalist for a long time, covering different situations, ordinary situations, and one day you find yourself to cover the war. So what are the transformations, both from the point of view of professional ethics, dilemmas you have to address in this situation, and maybe on practical also, because we see you through the film. You're behind the camera with someone next. We see you very risky and difficult situations. So how does it affect you, think?
So basically, how am I psychology affected by everything?
No,
we can talk about it. Actually, I'm not used to talk about myself and furthermore in public, because my job as a psychologist in this film and the psychoanalyst, I would even say, in this film, is to interest myself to others. So maybe yes, I will have to do this introspection and maybe to see a psychologist. But no, it's. It's hard when it's come to yourself to measure, to measure the consequences, and I don't know, and I don't even know if it's are the consequences of the war or the consequences of all the psychological involvement that I had with these characters and with these heroes, because the distance is very hard to find and to keep. When you are so much into trying to make themselves doing an introspection, and this work was very hard because it was completely parallel with Oleg and with Max, and completely opposite. Because Oleg, from the beginning, he was very eager to be filmed. He was very happy that we were coming to make a film about him, but it was very difficult to lead him to the end that you saw, basically, and to have this kind of confession that he made at the end of the day, because he wore just an armor, and he wouldn't about to make any confession at all. He was himself in this discourse of propaganda. As for Max, it was the opposite. The guy was completely broken, lost, suffering, tortured, and he wanted to tell everything, and he needed to talk, and he was keeping on calling me in the nights, and we were walking and we were speaking, and I was just trying to make him not going mad, but he didn't want to be filmed. So all the job was to bring his confessions and this kind of interaction that I had with him in front of the camera. So, and this was a huge job, actually. It was very difficult, and it was on a long period of time. When you make a report, you just make a report, and you end up with it, and you go to something else. And here it was months and months, and yes, you're exhausted at the end, but it's not only war. It's like I said, the situation that I'm living in. It's everything. I mean, first, when you become a journalist, it's because because you want to be a media. You want to be a vector. You want to what you witness. You don't want to be the only one to witness it. You want to tell it to people and to bring the story to people. But when daily you have to bring this kind of story, to say that everything is a big lie, to say that this war is completely artificially created, and even more, you can't explain it. Years after that, when I speak with people in France, they said, "Oh, really, propaganda? Oh, really, they think they are fascists?" But you just, I mean, yes, the world is not connected. So when you have to connect everything, it's psychologically, and we are not only. I haven't been voting for the last elections in Russia, and people ask me, "But why don't you vote? You are a Russian citizen," because I'm both French and Russian citizen. And I said, because I don't want to consider myself as part of this society. I'm an observer, but actually not. I'm not an observer. I'm part of the society, and it's really painful for me. And to talk about war in Ukraine and to see films about war in Ukraine now, and it's getting more and more difficult, and maybe I just need a break, but yes, it's really difficult.
Thank you very much. I will, as before asking a question, I would really like to praise you for this film. It's like the fourth time I think I'm seeing it, and every time it's a kind of discovery, and I'm emotionally involved every time I see it again. I think, I mean, we've seen a lot of things, we've read a lot of things on this armed conflict in Donbass. We discussed a lot of topics there. But I think your film shows us no other source shows me the many different things, many important things to understand this conflict. The dynamics of personal motivations, extraordinarily painted in this film. This switch, this starting point for everyone, and I think we'll ask you questions about the starting point for your characters, but also this switch from a general idea, from an altruistic vision to something really personal, linked to the death of some of people around you, to what you experience, etc. And this is, I mean, we can see it step by step, really beautifully and strikingly depicted in your movie. The humanity of your characters, and this is, I think, this is really your work of you too. The way you manage to show the human being and to make us feel things with them, which is really not natural in this room, in which we usually talk about the separatists, the Russian volunteers in a kind of, you know, this is the aliens, this is the bad guys way. And your film is really breaking this basic vision of what is considered to be the bad side by most of us in this room, actually.
If I just can say two words about this, because thank you very much. You tackle a very important thing in our démarche, in our the way that we wanted to make it. We didn't want to say, okay, they are good or they are bad. Where are the good side or where are the bad side? We tried to be as final as we can to what they are and to their questionings. And I think that at the end of the day, I see pro-Ukrainian people who say me, I hate them, or I have a pity for them, or I like them, or I pardon them, or maybe I just want to kill them because they are just too stupid. I mean, there is a lot of reaction. Maybe you can tell me also afterwards of your reactions, but it's I think this is what satisfies us at the end.
And us also. And just another small thing before I ask my question, because I never had a chance to express it, and this time I felt it really, really strongly. It's the place of music. I think you worked a lot on music for this film. I mean, if it's not conscious choices,
yes, it is.
It is, yeah, sure. This mix of Soviet references, Second World War songs, bandit songs and Russian songs that kind of shaped some kind of behavior in post-Soviet area, and this new separatist music, it's really, I think it deserves a study. It's a separate study, and I really wanted to underline that this is also, I mean, you have many visual qualities in this film, and this in music, the use you have of music is also a great quality, aesthetic quality of the film.
I can give you the behind the scenes of the music if you want.
Yes, I do.
Yes, because actually it's not our merit.
Merit.
Okay, it's not our merit because the magic of the reality and the magic of the film is that all the music you hear we didn't add one song to what's happening on what you see on the screen. Everything is our songs which they are listening to when we show you the situation. When Max is doing his sport, when they are cleaning their arms, when they are in the car, when every music, it's natural sound. I mean, of course, there is a lot of mix on the editing, but it's natural song. And at the end of the film, when you see Oleg crying, it's the song which he is listening to when he starts crying. So there is no trick with the music, and I think that's why it
music
works.
Is with them all the time.
Music is for them and for their psychological healing also. It's their autobiography. It's their reflection. It's what they feel. So I think that's why it matches pretty well.
To follow up on what Anna said about your film, I think that maybe less through Max, but essentially through the character of Oleg and what Oleg says to us, we understand very well why they're staying actually there. Through different situations they describe, because sometimes they tell that the war is senseless, but actually we understand what keeps them there. But I would have a question concerning their social backgrounds actually. It's the starting point, because we have few information. We know from where they come in Russia. We know more or less why they came. Oleg tells us about this ideological part, and he's disappointed actually very soon. Max mentions some personal relationship with a girl, but we don't know whom they were before actually. I think it's also very important to understand this logic of engagement in the war. So can you just elaborate on that from kind of have their professional background? So whom they were before, and to follow up where they are now. Actually, I'm pretty much sure that you are following those trajectories. So we would be interested in this starting point and today's point.
Yes, I agree with you that maybe it misses in the film to see who they were before the war, etc. We had this reflection. At the end of the day, we thought that the film was a bit too long, so we had to cut something. It was in the film at the beginning, but why we decided also to remove it, it's because we wanted maybe these guys to be anybody. They could have been any guys, any Russian guys, and it doesn't really matter who they were and where they came from. But I agree with you that the question is important and interesting to emphasize. So as for Oleg, he made several just jobs. He hadn't really a profession, but he was fond of hardball. It's like paintball, but with pneumatic guns. And he was also training kids and teenagers and orphans in a patriotic sportive patriotic club. Like there is a lot of clubs in Russia when kids basically they are making sport, but they also have patriotic education and paramilitary education, but in form of a game, but it's very widespread in Russia now. And he was quite in a also social approach, because he was making these trainings, but he went to an orphan to find for orphans, to educate orphans. He was taking care of elder person, of missing persons. So it's everything is about for Russia they don't see what is bad in the military topic. For them it's related to patriotism. He was also, he has this background. You see why we show his mother, basically. It's also to show where he come from and what is the ideological background in his family. One day he was making volunteering for humanitarian volunteering, and they received a train of refugees from the Donbass. And that's where we come, because in this part of the world and in this part of Donbass, people are completely sure that Ukrainian fascists have come to make a genocide, basically, because they are also watching Russian TV and they are supporting separatists, people who are here to defend them. And for them, it's not hard to believe in this propaganda, because when you are shelled every day from the other side, yes, naturally you believe that these people are killing you. I mean, it's just mathematics. So you don't look for causes of this conflict. You are ordinary folks. You don't make politics. So yes, he heard all these speeches of Ukrainian fascists, etc. So it's a combination of things. It's propaganda, but I think propaganda isn't enough for a man to go to make a war and to risk his life and even to die. Yes, you can be altruist and you can, and maybe you say you want to help people, etc. But going to war is very, very egoistic at the end of the day, because you leave your family, you leave your crying mother, and you want to risk your life. So yes, there is a part of willingness to help poor people. There is a part of propaganda, but it's also like a game, and I think that these guys, it's also the effect of propaganda. It's massive. People don't really think; they just act. Like it's a massive thing, a massive movement, and that's what's scary. So that's also what we wanted to show, is that behind this movement, people don't know why they come here, why they are coming here. That's why we didn't also show everything from the scratch, because it's also influenced the reflection.
Max background.
Max. Max, he was, but I think he says it in the film or not. He was industrial alpinist, so he had a job, but Max is. Max maybe is easier to understand, because he's just torture guy who finds his place in the world, and he's looking for adventure and adrenaline, and he's tortured, and I mean, so this kind of people and guys, they're like good victims for propaganda, if I could say so, because war is attracting. I mean, for a man, even more for a guy who grew up in this kind of patriotic education, when all the day on television, every day for years, you see like the great patriotic war where our grandfathers won against the fascists, etc. And all the Russian propaganda is based on this, and it's a combination of factors, I think.
So do you know what happened to them?
Yes, Oleg is in Moscow. He's looking for a job, and he's fidèle.
Loyal.
He's faithful to what he said in the film. Like for Oleg, the beginning, the war didn't exist. There was no war, so he just wanted to forget this period, and he can't just hear the word Donetsk anymore. And also, we are pretty pleased that we came to this point, to this breaking point, and to this catharsis you saw at the end of the film, because we weren't sure that we would get it on the camera. But we were sure from the beginning that we would come to it, but the question was a question of time. So now, yes, he's quite like he was during the film, but just without this character, this hero of Dubina. He just get rid of this, and he tried to live his life. And yes, and he's definitely sure it was a mistake, and he regrets it, and he's trying to make his life again. And as for Max, I'm less in touch with Max, but he's lost somewhere in Russia in a village, and hunting and taking furs of the animals, and he has a girlfriend, and I don't know, maybe now he has a beard, and but he's how he was like tortured, and he can't find his place among the dead or among the living people.
Thank you. Let's open up to your questions. Maybe.
Thank you so much for this film. I think it not only speaks to much of what we were talking about all day, but it's just a really great window into this world. So thank you. I love that the music was organic. I can't believe that. That's amazing. I wanted to ask you some specific things about the actual filming. I noticed that there's so many close-ups, like really, really tight close-ups on their faces and on objects, and I wondered sort of what was your thinking behind that, and also how you actually did the filming. I mean, you said that it took a long time to get them to talk, to have these confessions happen on camera. So how did you do that? And how did you do that as a woman? And how did you build that? How did you build that trust in this group of soldiers?
Yes, thank you for the first notice, because it's good you notice it, because this was our willing from the beginning. We knew very clearly what we were about to do. We weren't like just filming for filming. We knew that we wanted to the story to be told from the first from themselves. So we knew that we wanted to hear them thinking when something happens. That's why we filmed so much close-ups, because we knew that we were about to show what's happening in in their heads at the moment where it happens. So we had double approach. The first approach was about to film the action without interacting at all. So we tried to make ourselves as invisible as we could, because we were two cameras. So I was the main camera filming the action, and James was the second camera filming the beauty shots, etc. And the second view. Sometimes I was alone with the camera, because we discussed it together with James to know where are the moments where we could have a privileged approach, where we could get a confession, where we could get something. And there were moments when he left me alone with Oleg or with Max. There were moments when we felt like it's okay, we can be two cameras, they won't be too much noticing us. And and the second part, yes, apart from filming just the action and what's happening, was to make a very long sitting interviews. And you have just a part of this interview when Oleg was in the basement and telling about the battle. And we had 3 axes in these interviews. The first was biographic. They had to tell us everything about themselves. The second axe was to make them saying what happened, what we witnessed with them. So to get their story of basically everything happened during the day. And the third and very important axe was psychology. So it was like, so okay, what do you feel? Why are you here? What is war for you, and etc. I mean, and all these kind of questions. And it was just not interviews. It was like a kind of psychoanalysis. And I was doing this because I speak Russian and James doesn't. So it was my job. But it was very important for James to be here also, and to take this. Because I was leaving my camera just rolling, and then I started the interaction, and James was capturing all the beauty shots of the face, etc. And James, as a photographer, knows how to do it very well, to make himself invisible and to catch the moment. So it was very important. So yes, there were parts where, like when Max came back to Russia, when we couldn't be 3 of us. So I was just with Max. And it was also very important to be 2, because because of this distance, because of this involvement that I had psychologically with them, and I just couldn't. I mean, James's part of the work was as important as mine, even if he didn't speak Russian, because we had all this reflection together. Where are the moments when we can get something? What do we miss? What is important in the action to emphasize on? What is not? I mean, it's a huge reflection, psychological reflection on where is the breaking point? What happened that could they make doubt of something? And I think that we also had to think a lot of what do we bring to them, because it was not just interviews, it was interaction, it was discussion, and I was giving them my point of view of this war, and I was trying to make them come to something. But I think that if we were wrong about themselves from the beginning, we would be lying with the film, because we would make them change their opinion. But at the end of the day, we didn't make them change their opinion at all. We just made them confessing their real opinion of the war. And that's what we are satisfied with, and we knew it only after, when we showed the film to Oleg and to Max. And it was the most scaring point for us, to know what will be their reaction. Will they tell us, no, but it's not our story, because they told the story themselves. So when you edit and when you make this job, of course you ask yourself, is it my take, or is it their deep and sincere take? And Oleg and Max, they said, okay, yes, that's what we lived. That's That's our story, and this was very important for us.
Thanks a lot. Actually, thanks a lot. You partly answered my question. I just wonder about ethics and safety dilemmas when you do movies like this, especially documentaries. How did you solve this like ethics problem when you have your heroes like openly you name them, and did they sign some forms, or but you replied that you've actually shown them these movies, because I know it was one scandal, recent case with documentary Grozny Blues on Chechen women activists. And Italian director was making movie with them, and he got this their permission to show, but actually I think he didn't show them the final movie, and the trailer was quite provocative, and later these activists, so some were beaten and others were forced to leave Chechen Republic. So I just want to know how you were dealing with these safety issues for your heroes.
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, we are still dealing with it, so maybe I won't reveal every aspect of it. But basically what I have to say is that we try to make this film not to be broadcast in Russia or in Ukraine, even if I think that these are two places where the film should be broadcast. But we don't show it in territories in conflict because we have promised to our characters that we would try as much as possible for them to stay safe. So that's a choice for them, but I'm sorry, I can't tell everything about it.
Elena Schmidt, Switzerland. Elena, many thanks for your wonderful work. I have two questions. My first question is on religion for these people you show. You show it very, very good in your film, but could you please tell a little bit more? Do these old people are Christians? Do they show it very often? Does religion help them to survive? Do they also believe in different kinds of superstitions? And my second question is, could you please explain the term двухсотники and трехсотники? I did not really understand it.
The 200 are deaf, and 300 are wounded, injured.
Yeah.
Yes.
What does it mean?
It's a code name in army to when you have to make like coded messages, not to. The question is, what does it mean?
Yeah.
So the 200s are the dead people, and the soldiers, and the 300s are the injured, injured soldiers.
Back to Soviet times.
Yes, it was a coded message to talk about the casualties. As for religion, yes, but I mean, I think any fighter in the world is very religious, because religious is what is. You need to find consensual things and a common cause, and religion is actually the most common cause. But your question is interesting, because I heard a lot of guys, and the big commander Maper, which you don't so much in the film, but he is like this person au-dessus, yes, in charge, above everything. Like a shadow. He told me, yes, one time he was telling me we are fighting for for Orthodox, the other time we are fighting for Slavs. So yes, it's very superficial. I mean, it's like religion in Russia now. It's something. It's political. It's not like doesn't have much to do with your deep feelings and you believe in God. But as for Oleg, I know he's from Orthodox family, and he is himself quite a believer. Max, we didn't talk about religion much. I don't think he really cares about religion, but yes, they have like icons everywhere and they are praying. But it's a very, as you know, it's a very Russian thing, and a very not only Russian, but in all the Slav world, like religion is today very important.
So this is related to the question about security. Yuri Zhukov, University of Michigan. So this is amazing footage, and what's particularly incredible about it is that most interviews of this sort, most of these documentaries, feel very staged. There were aspects of this, such as when Malpiech was, giving soup to the prisoner of war. That was difficult to watch.
Excuse me, can you speak more slowly, just because?
Sorry. So a lot of interviews like this feel very staged. They put on a show for the journalists. And for instance, when Malpiech was feeding soup to the prisoner, there were aspects of this kind of staged quality. But then 10 seconds later, when you walk out into the street, you see a store across the street, Milaton, which in 5 seconds on my Google Maps, I can trace it to Vulitsa Toma in Donetsk. So there are basic operational intelligence issues like that, and many aspects of your footage which could be seen by members of that unit as being compromising, dangerous. So I was wondering if, in your experience as a journalist in DNR, did they assign minders to you to watch what you were doing, make sure that you weren't filming the right thing? What kind of hoops did you have to jump through? Did you have to become accredited with the DNR? What was your experience like, and how did you get around this? Did they request to see the footage before it was released?
Thank you. I had a lot of different experience when I reported, but I will talk about the film, obviously. The deal with Malpiech's battalion was not to screen the film at the moment of the events. And I will give you a simple example. On the 2nd and 3rd of June, this night when we were during this battle with them, the next day, we were the only journalists slash filmmakers, but also journalists, being with them this night. Nobody else were with the separatist fighters, and it was the first huge battle after another ceasefire. So the next day, every media of the planet, or at least francophone media, were calling us because they knew we were there. Please make reports for us. Please, we need footage, and etc. and etc. And we didn't release anything. We could have become very rich this night, but but we didn't release any information or any footage at all because we had this deal with them. And the film now is released, but they are not at the Artyom Street anymore for a long time. And so yes, of course, and that's also how we got their confidence, because I had this friend which worked for Russian TV. It was like a guarantee that I wouldn't trick them on this, and that the safety would be fine. So that's why they allowed us this complete total access. But because it was really a total access. I mean, there weren't, I think, moments when we were inside the battalion that we couldn't film, apart from the moments when they were going to the headquarters of the army or seeing Russian curators or everything. Of course, when they were going to another military bases or to see the officers, etc., Russian officers, we wouldn't allow. We were completely allowed inside the battalion and inside basically these 3 places which where the film took place. Their Artyom-Stolik base in Donetsk, the base which is about 500 meters away of the positions, and the bunker and the trenches at the positions.
I will tell you after all the good things I think about these films. One of the things you mentioned, Anna, is the music, and this film helps also to see how these guys are in a flow of narrative, and they are brought by that. And even if they think something else, still they are there because of this narrative, of this music, and obviously a lot of these songs have been made during the war and so on. So continuing with the narrative, what is exceptional in this movie is that you managed to do it without speaking any time about Putin. I can't do that. Just once we see just a picture of Putin in an office somewhere. So and this is very exceptional because my experience of this conflict is that every single simple soldier that you would meet would give you a lesson of geopolitics. You would think about Obama, Putin, as if he would have direct line. So I want to understand if they were speaking about that, and if you did the choice to not speak about Obama and Putin and so on.
Yes, they were, of course, not so much speaking about Putin himself, because Putin, like, you can't pronounce his name, like in Harry Potter, but no, I'm joking. But of course they were talking about politics, and they were giving this speech of propaganda, but that's not what we came for. And I'm really glad that we are here today, and that, thank you, Dominic, and the chair of Ukrainian Studies, because we didn't know that our film would interest as much the scholar community, and it's a great honor for me that you are interested in this movie, because we made it for purpose not to talk about politics and geopolitics in the film. We were about just to explore the psychology of our characters. Apparently we failed in it, and this film is very geopolitic. So if you are interested in it, and it's very important for us, because we were also wondering.
I think we're interested in the sociological part much more than it.
Yes, but I mean, we were wondering whether maybe even it's not modest at all, but this film would have an historical value to tell about this conflict later. So, so yes, they were talking about. But when they talk about politics, I mean, they give the basic speech of propaganda, like Ukrainian fascists are killing Russian people. So it doesn't go beyond this, and it's not very deep and smart. So I mean, we weren't about to show it, even if I think that, like, basically they just don't care about politics, and they don't care about Putin at all. I've asked Oleg, did he go to vote for the last election when Putin was re-elected? He says yes, or not the last, but the one before. Like, yes, I were. When I were in the army, they took us and we voted, and that's it. But they don't care about Putin, really. It's everything superficial. I mean, they don't love Putin, and they don't praise Putin. They just don't care about Putin, and they are lucid about what's happening in Russia. And today, when I talk with Oleg, sometimes he's quite even an oppositional point of view, and he didn't change his mind. He was always thinking like this, but today he just tell me, okay, what I see today, I didn't want just to see it, and I didn't want to think it. I wanted to be like everybody, and I wanted to think like everybody. But now you opened my eyes, or I opened it myself. But how can I live now in this reality? And I'm unhappy because you have the choice to take your passport and go and live abroad in France, but I must stay here and live with it. So how can I do? But so they just are not that fond about Putin, like neither I think Russian people are really today in Russia. They just have nothing to trust in apart from Putin. So.
They have an ideology on defend the Russia or something like this.
But yes, of course. But I think yes, there are people who really believe in it, but it's not the majority.
I really like the sense that that's okay. I thought it was really interesting how you transferred this kind of sense of fatalism of these people, especially I think Oleg, right, who feels to me kind of carried on by life, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, like what you are commenting now, right? That he doesn't reflect on politics. He doesn't think that he's an actor. He's an agency that can do something. I think it really came out very interestingly. And my question relates to whether you think he would come up to this realization or this confession that you managed to get out of him, if not for you filming him or not for your film.
Well, that's a question of, it's a very personal question to him. I couldn't answer on his, I mean, he's not here basically to answer this question. I think it's a question to him, not to me. Would he come to it or it's like I said, I think that he was seeing clearly a lot of things, but like every Russian people do. I mean, Russians, they are not stupid, and they are not evil, and they are not bad. They are just trying every time, always trying to cope with what they are given, and that's it. And when you are angry, when you are hateful, it's not because you have a good life. It's not because you are happy. It's because you feel like there is this joke which circulates in Russia now. Like, yes, I'm the most patriot in the world. I love my country. I love Putin. Oh, here's an American passport. Yes, please give it to me. Or not American or any passport. So I mean, everything's so superficial. Everything's so. Another joke, like there are several people sitting around the table, and Russian people drinking vodka with a stranger, and the stranger tells a story. They kept on telling me all the night long how bad Putin is and how bad it is to live in Russia. And I didn't agree, but at the end of the day, when I agreed with them, they bet me. So that's the same thing. It's a psychological question, a philosophical question, and it's a question of how could Soviet era last for 70 years without like people making a revolution. Simplement.
Hi, just a very quick statement. I spent a little time in the Canadian Army, and the film is amazing in terms of how it shows small unit psychology, how it holds together, why it falls apart, why leaders leave, and how they fail. It could almost be used as a training film. It's really well done. But a question to you. You were there, you were at war, you saw the dead bodies, you saw the maggots and so forth, but yet you didn't have the defenses soldiers would have, you didn't have the mutual support aside from James. How did it stress you, and how did you deal with the stress?
I'm making a training for reporting in war zone next month, and I told my bosses, like, okay, it was time to. But always people ask us, how do you feel when you see dead bodies and when you see dead people and etc. But it's not the hardest thing, I think, or it has an influence on us which is completely unconscious and that I don't perceive myself maybe, but I don't feel like it's painful for me to see like a dead body. Again, what is it's like when you say at war, you don't have to have pity for dead people, you have pity for living people and for their lives. So yes, what hurts me today, it's not what when I saw dead bodies, I mean dead are dead and it's war, and it's even normal. You know, I was crying last time when I came back from Beslan, and I was speaking with mothers of the Beslan, and it happens 15 years ago. I didn't cry any time when I was at war in Donbass or after, and even for years I haven't been crying. But this story 15 years ago, when in peaceful time you have like so much children killed by the one who are about to protect them in a school. This is completely terrific and horrific. But when you are at war, dead and burials and mothers crying, etc., it's normal. I mean, it's war. It's part of the story. So it doesn't affect you that much. What was the hardest thing at war was not this. It was to see all this lie and all this. I mean, it would have been easier if it was clear and if everything was official and everything was told. Like here we are fighting, and here we are fighting. But on the Russian side, basically, it's not a declared war as it was told before today, and also. It's hard to tell for people because again, all these people they don't know the truth, but they have their point of view and it's their truth. So you have to you ask yourself too much questions. You have to think of it every time, every day. How do I tell this story and where the story is? And this is the most painful, and it's hard, and psychologically, yes, that's the hardest thing.
I think we have a question.
Maybe we should pick up the last questions.
Which one?
2 or 3 questions.
I saw a lot of parallels between your film and Serhiy Loiko's book, Airport, in that Both of you dive deeply into the psychology of the participants, especially the combatants. So I'm interested also in whether you have any insights into the psychology on the other side of the front. You were quite careful to stay away from the politics on the side of the combatants on the DNR side. We know that on the other side, we might like to think that they're there for patriotic reasons, but I'm sure that's not the full story, and that they must have the same kind of psychological pressures and doubts and questions about what they're doing on that other side. Do you have any insights, or are you planning to dig into that side as well?
Let's collect the questions.
Okay, in a previous presentation, we heard this whole situation referred to as a civil war. And I wondered if you saw at any level that this is a civil war, or did people see it, the combatants, as a civil war?
And the third question. Thank you. And just a quick one, just to add to that. How does one end up in one of those units? So you've traced the history of Max and Oleg and how they end up in the unit and then when they leave, but it seems to be very much individual. Are there people who join by groups, or what is the kind of support network? Like, how do you trace their roots to the unit and then out of it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for these questions. The war is such a stupid thing that even when you try to cover everything and to be on both sides and etc. I mean, yes, from the beginning I was also going pretty much on the other side, on the Ukrainian side, but there's a lot of very, very good journalists and reporters who do the job on the Ukrainian side, and my friends, and we are always in touch. But as the war was going on, it was harder and harder to work on the both sides. So as I live in Moscow and with Russian passport and only Russian speaking, I mean, it's just pretty simple. I was more on this side because even my TV channels, which were Italy and France 24, when we were covering something, there was a team on the Ukrainian side, and me, I went to Moscow on the other side. So I mean, it was just geographic. I had to cover more this side than the Ukrainian side. So no, I didn't have that much insight from the Ukrainian side, but yes, I was several times with Ukrainian fighters, and the story was pretty clear to me that yes, these guys, they are patriots and they come to defend their land. I mean, it wasn't a big question for me, even if the question is more complicated than that. For the second question about the civil war, if I saw elements of civil war, you know, it's also a philosophic question, because of course, if you analyze it just geopolitically, no, of course it's not a civil war, because everything is organized by Russia. But a lot of local men and a lot of locals, and I mean every local which has its house in the war damaged areas, basically they are fighting. So and they are locals, and they pretend themselves to be as a civil war, but this is the story about propaganda, basically, because one time I was and just a short story, on a basement in Lugansk during a shelling with people who were watching Russian TV channel, and they wouldn't go outside for months, and they were telling me, but you Western media, you always talk about Russians fighting here, but who do you think are fighting? It's our sons, it's our brothers, it's our fathers. They are defending our families, our house, and etc. So when you hear this kind of speech, is it a civil war, or it isn't? Because these people, they live on this side, and they are fighting on this side. And I have been there like 2 months ago, and people keep on telling the same things, even if the war is going on. And a lot of things are said about propaganda, etc., but they don't hear this story like this. So for them, they are fighting also to defend their land. So it's not us to judge whether it is a civil war or not. But of course, geopolitically, no, it's not a civil war. And the second question about the support network, yeah. From the beginning of the conflict, it was like when there was a massive movement of volunteers who went there. They organized themselves on the social networks like Vkontakte for the most, and they basically, guys, it's like Oleg. It's pretty simple. You take a train ticket to Rostov, and then here, yes, you have like guys who take groups to bring them to the border, and then they are collected by other like commanders or other fighters, etc. So that's how it was organizing, and they were giving arms and went to the other side. But what you have to know also today is that today there are very much more locals which are fighting on the DPR side, and Russians, they mostly went back home. It's very simple because today Russia organized an army in the DPR. All the battalions have been dissolved and integrated into the army, and they receive salaries, which is different from the period we were filming because there were volunteers at this time, but the process to reorganize the DPR army went on starting from December 2014, and it ended this summer, and now they receive like 20,000 rubles for ordinary soldiers and more 30, 50 and more for officers. So now it's a job, and the average salary for civilians in Donetsk is now 10,000 rubles. So when you go to join the army, you are paid, and this is very important when there is wartime because you don't only fight anymore just to save your lands, and you don't quite fight now because yes, the ceasefire is broken. There are fights around Avdiivka, but the whole front line is very more calm than it was before. So they just go to army to the DPR army to earn money, and it's a job now. So more locals than Russians today.
Yes, I think unfortunately we're out of time, so yeah, another good set of applause to
Thank you very much.